our next speaker is someone that I already know. It was with me last year at the same conference at Vueday, Alex. And he is a core maintainer and full stack developer. A Nuxt.js core maintainer, sorry, need to be specific here. And he is on his 20s, such a young piece. And when he is not working on open source projects, he gives talks at conferences, writes blog posts, or consults other companies on web development with focus on Vue.js and Nuxt.js. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hey, JC, I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm good. Long time no see. Nice to see
Yeah,
you
true.
again.
Thanks for having
Um,
me here again, second time in a row. So that's
of
amazing.
course. So it is my second time. We started together and we move on together.
Exactly.
Well, I'm very interested on your talk because you're going to bring us a little bit into the SEO matter and going through the basics of it and best practice and implementations with Nuxt using vue-meta, which is really
Exactly.
important because I see a lot of websites using server-side rendering and not caring about the SEO part to actually promote their product on the web. So
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to your talk and what you have to bring us. And your talk is going to be recorded, right? So,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
then please write your questions on the chat. I will keep an eye on it to make sure I don't miss it. And we will come back after the talk to answer all of your questions. Uh, Welcome to the recording then of SEO in a Vue.js world.
There are 5.6 billion Google searches every day, and that roughly translates to 63,000 queries every second. Wow. And the numbers are even rising. But how high is the percentage of websites that actually receives visitors and traffic from Google? You'd be surprised. Not even 10%, according to studies of Ahrefs, with a sample size of over 1 billion pages. So, how to make sure that your website or your application is in that 9.37%, or even better, in the top one? Welcome to my talk, SEO in a Vue.js world. A few words about me. I'm Alex, a Nuxt.js core maintainer. I have a Twitter account and also a website and blog where I post every now and then a few technical articles regarding Vue and Nuxt.js. Job-wise, I'm a web dev consultant at my self-funded company Development. Okay, so let's get it on. What is SEO? A couple of you might have heard of the term already. Maybe some of you need SEO in a day-to-day job, and others don't need it all. Well, SEO is search engine optimization, and it's not rocket science. Don't worry. Also, it's not witchcraft. And users are the most important part. Even though it's search engine optimization, search engines are not as important as the user. Furthermore, you need to continuously improve and continuously practice SEO. It's not a one-time job. It's more marathon than a sprint. And also, it's not too hard to get started with, but to learn all the details can be a bit tough sometimes. And like web development, it's frequently changing. All right. SEO is mostly important for pages that search engines can access or can crawl. That means, for example, your own portfolio page, but also like marketing landing pages, forums, help databases, blogs and articles, and something like that. So if you have an own page, then SEO is something you should take care of if you're working on that. But for example, for a cool web app behind authentication, it's not important at all. So SEO is not relevant, as I said, for everything behind any kind of authentication because search engines can't access it. And also not for short-lived content because SEO is a long-term game. There are three pillars of SEO. First one is the on-page SEO pillar. It's mostly about content, and the old saying content is king is still true. If your website has amazing content, then that's really solid base to build off. User experience, same here. If people enjoy using your site, then it's perfect. Otherwise, you should work on that because nobody needs more people on the site that jump off the ship because it has horrible UX. But also keyword research, for example, find out what are people searching and why are they searching? What is the intention behind that search query, behind the keywords? So that might be an interesting part as well. And also meta tags and so on to advertise your site in the SERPs, in the search engine result page. The second pillar is called off-page. So everything that's not directly related to things on the website. That means, for example, link building, getting other people and other sites to link to your site. Citations, similar to link building, but by mentioning the brand name or the product or the company name. Social media, an important part there too, and authority in general. And the last of the three pillars is technical SEO. So how to improve the page speed, for example, the security, broken links, sitemap, and so on and so on. And in this talk, we want to focus on two of them, on-page and technical SEO. So why not off-page SEO? Well, mostly because of the time constraints. I mean, I could probably talk 30+ minutes about each of these pillars. So that's one point, but also because it's easier to get started with on-page and technical SEO as a developer. And off-page SEO can always be added later on, but should not be neglected anyway. Okay, SEO and Vue.js. Well, as you all know, Vue.js single-page applications generate HTML through JS. So the JavaScript is loaded and parsed, and then the HTML will be generated, right? If you only use SPAs. But, well, what happens if the JavaScript isn't there for some reason, or fails, or breaks, or can't be read? Well, that happens. A blank page, or if you've programmed so far, a loading spinner, or maybe an error state, but still no content. And that's critical. So the question is, can the search engines understand JavaScript? Is JavaScript a problem for search engines? And the answer is yes, for some, but luckily not for the big ones. For example, Google and Bing, they both can parse and understand JavaScript, so all good. And there are still some older ones, also some popular in other regions, some search engines that don't understand JavaScript. So depending on which region you focus, you should do your homework there and find out if that search engine that's popular there understands JavaScript or not. For that talk, let's focus on mostly Google, because that's the most popular search engine and the one people are mostly optimizing for. So now we can answer the question, can Google fetch and index Vue.js single-page applications? And the answer is yes, but there are a few things we should consider. So first of all, meta tags aren't present, and no preview is there when when we share links in the Discord or Twitter or on WhatsApp. So that's a clear con here. Another thing is, as I just mentioned, mistakes in JavaScript could lead to indexing blank pages and to break the whole page. Compared to HTML, JS is very fragile. If there's invalid HTML, the browser just skips it and that's it. But it's not that easy with JavaScript. And I think another important topic here is that delayed content might not get indexed at all because it's too late for Google. Google won't wait for everything. But yeah, the key point here is that indexing doesn't mean a page ranks well. Just because Google adds it, it doesn't mean that Google says, "Woo, awesome." So yeah, that's the point here. Another few things are that the fragment router mode won't work for SEO because there are technically no real URLs, because it's just a hashtag and the fragment. So you should use the history mode then, and that it's a bit more work for multi-page applications to redirect all things to an indexed HTML file where the SPA is loaded. To sum it up, TLDR, yes, Google can fetch and index Vue.js SPAs, but using just the SPA mode is, in my opinion, not enough when it comes to SEO, especially not if the industry is very competitive or your niche is very competitive. So you might want to think about changing here. And now the question, what else if not SPA? And the clear answer is server-side rendering. So for server-side rendering, we have two options. The first one is on the fly. So we have a Node.js server that converts the request on the fly and or receives the request and returns HTML. And one framework that does it is, for example, Nuxt.js. And The other disguised server-side rendering option is server-side rendering at build time, also known as static site generation or Jamstack. Same here, Nuxt.js covers our back, and there are also awesome other static site generators like VuePress or Gridsim. And just as a side note, you can also run your own setup for both. But well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? Sorry, reinvent the wheel, right? If you do, go ahead, but it's a lot more work. Okay, and a few advices before we start with SEO. So first of all, I really suggest to set up the page you want to analyze, or the pages, in the Google Search Console. It's quite quick to enter them there, and the Google Search Console will have lots of cool data, for example, for which keywords your page appears in the search engine result pages, or how many people click on these appearances. But also you can submit sitemaps, you can recrawl pages, you see penalties and errors and stuff. So this is all free and very easy to set up. But if you want to improve your SEO, you should do the sign up for your site right now, because it takes a bit until the first data is there. So when you have implemented all these cool things and you want to go live, then you already have a bit of data to compare. Yeah, so that would be a good thing. Another thing I recommend is adding an analysis tool, because you want to understand the behavior of your users. You want to see how many users on your site. So there's, for example, Matomo or Google Analytics, and that's always nice to find out why or on which pages people jump off, because maybe there are some issues, or there's not the content they're looking for, or it's too complex and so on. On the other hand, we have GDPR. So GDPR compliance is a thing here too, but it affects us all right. And last but not least, that's purely a bonus, completely optional, is to analyze the competition. You can use an SEO tool like Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz. They also have free tiers, but most of them are paid. And it's really good because in Google Search Console, you can only see your own data, but not the competition. So if you want to find out why the competition site is ranking so well, then that might be your choice. But as I said, you can, for example, also use the free tier there if that's enough for you. Okay, so let's improve our SEO game. First, we will use Nuxt for most of the code examples shown, mostly because it can be used for both server-side rendering modes, dynamic SSR and Jamstack. And it comes with vue-meta, which makes our SEO efforts really enjoyable. So SEO could be considered a first-class citizen in Nuxt. And the examples can also be easily ported and applied to other frameworks. So you will still understand what the gist is. So no worries there. And the example will be general and then more and more specific. And last but not least, well, users first. Okay, a quick introduction in vue-meta and how things look like there. Vue-meta is a Vue library to manage HTML metadata. So Vue library, you can use it in your project already, but the full power comes with server-side rendering. And now you have your Vue component, the scripts part here, and then you have a key called meta info, and that accepts an object. So you can set, for example, a title that's shown in the tab bar above and also in the SERPs. You have a title template, which I'll explain in a bit, and also you can also set meta text and stuff. And in Nuxt, it looks basically the same, but we now have a head function that returns an object, and this could also be a head object. That's up to you, but it now can be a function too. Okay, let's get it on. First of all, for our examples, we have an SEO category and we have the effort. 1 is low and 5 is quite high. Okay, first one, basic security. And you wonder why is this related to SEO? Well, 5 or more letters, HTTPS. Yeah, 5 letters, HTTPS. It's a ranking factor and it's free, it's easy, and it's important for the security, for example, of forms. So you should enable HTTPS if you haven't done it already. Otherwise, if you don't have it, first it's a ranking factor, so it will give you a disadvantage in ranking, but also people will see this not secure label in the address bar, especially if it's like money topic or health topic. they will quickly leave, I guess. So that's a low-hanging fruit, very easy to do, and you should really do that and add HTTPS. And there are also like common things like setting security headers and keeping your CMS and stuff accounts in good shape, using hard passwords and so on. But this is not related to ranking. This is just basic security thing. And why should you do that? Well, because you want to create trust for the visitor. If they're on your side, they should feel well and comfortable. And this is usually a good sign. Right, so low-hanging fruit really do that. Another must-have nowadays is mobile friendliness. Lots of traffic comes from mobile devices, smartphones, tablets. So there's so many devices with smaller screens on there, and also with no mouse and keyboard, and so with touch gestures and stuff. And again, it's a ranking factor. So even if you say, oh no, we don't have that, Google will by default now use the mobile crawler to index your site. So if it's not mobile friendly, disadvantage in ranking. Good thing is they have a test to check if everything's all right, if they consider your page mobile friendly or not. And again, here the effort depends on the current state of the mobile friendly version of your site. Now we have Core Web Vitals, another new initiative talking about like user experience for mobile sites, but also for not mobile sites here. And they have 3 metrics, and they describe them as essential metrics for a healthy site. This will be a ranking factor in 2021, and I usually suggest to optimize for them already, because these 3 values are there to quantify user experience. If these 3 values are good, that means the users won't experience weird like layout, juggling and rubber banding, or layout shifts, as it's called in the cumulative layout shift metric. So it's usually a good idea to start already. And now Google is going the way to quantify UX somehow and also influence the page ranking based on that. Again, here effort depends on the state. And you will have a Nuxt module to also measure the core web vitals of people visiting your site, but there are also packages for other frameworks. And in general, there's a web vital NPM module as well. Right, text compression, bit undercover and a bit underrated because again, it's a must-have. We don't think a lot about it. If you've heard gzip, that's the default algorithm used. I would say on at least 80% of pages it's there. And it's important, but gzip is old, and in 2015 there is broadly seeing light, a new algorithm, a new compression algorithm from Google, for a fully open source, and it's not only faster but also leading to smaller file size. So why not using it? In 2015, one could say because nobody supports it, it's new, but that's not an argument anymore. Every modern browser, so everything besides Internet Explorer, is supporting broadly, and even for IE, you can use gzip fallback. So this would be a good thing to implement. Also because faster, smaller assets and faster compression means better page speed, and page speed is a ranking factor again. If you don't know if your site supports broadly, you can check broadly.pro, just enter your address there, and then you're good to go. It will tell you, and there are also some guides on there to see how to implement that. Right. Nuxt itself comes with gzip out of box if you use dynamic SSR. Broadly can be enabled in Nuxt as well, but usually it's the job of your web server, so Apache, Nginx, Caddy, and so on, or your platform provider, which is, for example, Netlify. Or if you have used Cloudflare, then Cloudflare does it as well. And there's this toggle here you can just flip, and I think it's even enabled by default nowadays, so all good. And if you can, and if your CDN allows that, you can push pre-generated compressed assets. So you can compress them on build time, then just push them up, and you can compress them with the highest level of the compression algorithm. So it doesn't happen on the fly, it just happens once before, and then the files are really, really small. And this also saves time on page speed, of course. Right. Next one is broken links and redirects. Good topic, and well, pretty simple to summarize. First, make sure that you don't link to broken pages and also make sure that others don't link to broken pages on your site. First one is pretty easy. You can automate that with a crawler. Check if all external links return 301 or 200. If they return 300 something, follow and then see if they return a 2xx code. Way easier solution coming a bit. But the second one is a bit trickier. First of all, why should be links broken from others? Can't they type the right URL or why? The reason is simple. If you change your URL structure and you don't implement redirects, well, there you go. 404, boom. So please, if you change URL structure, set up redirects. Or if there are people linking to things that don't exist anymore, set up redirects to something similar to not miss these link powers. Also, if you do that frequently because you've changed the stack every now and then, don't create redirect chains and avoid them. So don't link A to B and B to C, because if you redirect A to B and then redirect B to C, this takes twice the time. Redirect A to C and you're good to go. Here again, effort depends a bit on the site and content size. And I have some tooling recommendations here. First of all, Screaming Frog. That's a crawler that's free for smaller sites. So that would be for the first topic. And the Ahrefs backlink checker is also free, which is nice to see which pages are linking to your page. Google Search Console also has data, but it's usually not as mature as the data from Ahrefs. Right. Redirects in general should be implemented through your web server or platform provider. So again, Apache, Nginx, or Netlify, Heroku, whatever. If you don't have access, then you can go for the Nuxt redirect module there. I use Netlify for my blog, for example, and I can just redirect URLs like that. I have an _ redirect file, and then I use old URL, new URL, and 301, that's it. So 301 is the status code to say redirect permanently, which should be used there. Canonical links, another nice topic, which is a bit underrated, especially nice if you haven't cared a lot about the URL structure and now want to change that. My recommendation, no matter which site, set a canonical link for every page. A canonical link basically represents the preferred link or preferred version of the page, and it's especially handy if you have pages with duplicate content. For example, in e-commerce, that's quite common. If you have, say, a shop for shoes, and then you have a special running, but you have a page about Nike Air Max, and then you have a special page that contains mostly the same content, maybe a bit special topics, but say 90% same content, then you usually want to set the canonical URL for both to the Nike Air Max one. For the shoes one, so the everlasting or the permanent URL. Then Google knows it, and it can automatically understand what's happening there. It's also nice for trading slash enforcement, but we'll come to that in a bit. So let's see variations of links. And the magenta ones, they should be basically cleared by the web server. So www or non-www, this is one thing the web server should handle, also HTTP to HTTPS redirection. But all the other things like removing query parameters, which you should not rely on, or removing the fragment part behind the hashtag, these are all things canonical links are good for. Right, so we have one final URL object or representation that should also be consistent throughout the whole application. Okay, my implementation Nuxt.js. So we use layout here, which is the wrapper component around all pages or views for those of you who so like router views. And we have a head function from vue-meta here again. So what happens is first we get our base URL, for example, from the env variables or from runtime config. Then we get a path from the route from the view router, and then I check if the path ends with a slash, and if so, I'll take it as is. Otherwise, if there's no slash, I'll add a trailing slash there, mostly because I want to enforce a trailing slash there. And then we return an object with all the other metadata and then link an array with that single element if you don't have anything else there. Rel canonical and href combined from base URL and path with slash here. Good. Next topic, sitemaps. Again, Sitemap is a very useful tool to tell Google, oh, these are all my relevant pages. So create a sitemap for all your relevant URLs. Good thing is it can be automated quite easily, actually. And if you have lots of URLs, so again, e-commerce, for example, split them up into multiple sitemaps, also automatable. If you have a media-heavy site, then an image and video sitemap might be interesting for you. So take a look at that too, if that's the case. Nuxt.js has a sitemap module for generating URLs, and it catches all static URLs. For dynamic ones, you can provide these through API, file system, or the crawler. And this would be the config here. The host name, similar to the base URL from that Canonical Link example, I hard-coded it now here as an example. Then we can exclude also URLs, for example, everything that starts with /admin, legit. And then we can define our dynamic routes here. And in theory, you could also set a change frequency, a priority, and last modified. But I usually don't do that because most of these values are ignored anyway. And now we get our XML sitemap, and I shorten it a bit. So we only have one URL here. For example, that one. Now the location is the actual URL. And then last modified, which might be respected by Google, and priority, which can be omitted because Google says we don't care about priority because people always set it to 1. So that's what a sitemap looks in the end. And then you can submit that, for example, to Google Search Console. Another important factor is optimizing your assets, but I'll just go briefly over that. There are lots of good talks and resources about optimizing your JavaScript bundle and your images and so on. So optimize responsive images via picture, use the right format and size, also WebP, AVIF, JPEG, XL is coming up, I think, all these things. Remove metadata, compress lossy, and lazy loading, very important. And then also improve JavaScript through code splitting, lazy loading, and tree shaking. The good thing is code splitting is automatically done by Nuxt. And also the loading of the chunks that are, for example, behind VIF. So Nuxt got you covered again. Tree shaking, one important thing here is use tree shakeable dependencies. So no moment, no Lodash ES because ESM syntax. And for example, date functions or Luxon or day.js, whatever. And please cache all static assets. It's so easy if you use hashes or fingerprinting. That's perfect then. But yeah, that's a good one. And please use the scripted file name for images. It's not very hard, and you can also combine it with the hashes. So live example again, I have, for example, domain, then add to X for the size or the density in this case, and then the hash, and you're good to go. Because this can be helpful for search engines sometimes. Now the page structure. The page structure is could be a bit more effort than usual. But in general, you should create a logical and hierarchical page structure. So sounds easy, right? But it's not that easy, especially if you have lots of categories and subcategories and stuff. Rule of thumb, don't nest pages too deeply, so not more than 3 clicks. Everything should be reachable with 3 clicks on your site. Not always easy to get that on point, but that's the general guideline. Also, category pages, make them worth indexing. No, don't just write category name and then, I don't know, for example, Nuxt.js and then blog post, blog post, blog post. Write what is Nuxt.js or what is the category, why is it there? But I'm guilty of this myself. But that's a good idea to make category pages worth indexing. And internal linking, very important. Link topics, link blog posts, articles that are related somehow. Even if it's just a side sentence, that's really important. And last but not least, a small structure example that usually works. It's called a pyramid structure, and we start with home. And there we have some categories, and the categories have either subcategories or simply pages. And there we go. Pyramid structure, quite logical. And in this case, for example, home would be just slash. Then we have /cat1, /cat1, and then some, I don't know, article, blog posts, and so on. So this can be shown in your URLs as well, which brings us to the next topic, URL structure. Please use short and descriptive URLs. Remove stop words like and, the, and so on, because they're not necessary to understand the context. Again, enforce trailing slashes or remove them so you can decide if you want to have a slash or you don't want to have it. I suggest to keep this consistent throughout the whole application, or in general everywhere. Also, please place keywords inside your URL. It's easier to look it up in the address bar again, but also it's easy to understand for search engines. And as I mentioned before, avoid query params unless your old CMS forces you to do so, like $ID equals and so on. Another thing, again, quite undercover, use hyphens as delimiters. Hyphens are the only allowed way for delimiters. So no underscores, no pipes, no ats, no, I don't know, dots. Use hyphens. And decide between non-www or www. All right. Practical example, let's take abc.com/ID equals 129310231. Horrible URL. Let's transform that into something more readable. Let's remove the query parameter and just use a plain HTML file. It's still not very nice because not descriptive, not speakable, and not short. Well, okay, still not too long, but not descriptive. This is not short at all, but it's at least a bit more descriptive. Now we know what that URL could lead us to, a blog post about benefits of Nuxt. But we have underscores instead of hyphens, and it's still very long. So what we do know, oh, okay, a blog post. So let's create a blog category and then write post about benefits of Nuxt. Okay, now we have a few redundant things, like I don't need to say that it's a post about something if it's in /blog. And still, it's better than nothing. So one more final optimization, and we're good to go. That's a short, concise URL. I know what I'm expected to see there. And there we go. Nice. Okay. We've talked about trailing slash a bit. So consistent trailing slash with Nuxt is not too difficult. It's basically one attribute in Nuxt config.js. But attention, you have to set up redirects then for the non-slash URLs unless your platform is doing that for you already. And for example, Netlify is doing that already. Otherwise, your non-slash URLs will deliver a 4.4, and that's not what you want usually. Okay, next topic, semantic HTML. Well, use semantic HTML for real, please. I've seen this so many times. A div with @click and then router push. No, please don't do this. Don't do this at all. If you change a page on click, it's usually an A tag or a Nuxt link that's equivalent. So if it's an internal link, use a Nuxt link or router link. If it's an external link, use an A tag. Anchor works fine. It's actionable and it's not a link, then it's usually a button. Don't use a div with @click, please. Another thing that's quite cool is you can use HTML5 goodies like aside, main, nav, footer, and so on, where applicable if you like to. And this could also deserve an own chapter. Use headings appropriately in hierarchy. And don't do like H1, H5, H4, and so on. Just do H1, H2, H3, H4, H5. And of course, you can start again. That's totally fine if the section is done with an H2 or so on again. And don't do something like that where you set the tag of a Nuxt link to div and then on clicking a div do something totally different. Don't. Alt tags, also important for accessibility. As I said, users first, but also good for search engines. Please provide alt tags. Simple as that. Don't just stuff keywords in there. Really just describe the images. That's way more worth it. Real descriptions, and if you want, you can even source that through the AI if you want to. So there's literally no reason to not specify alt tags, unless it's a presentational image, but then you can set the area role. And the last large chapter is meta tags. So first, set standard meta tags like UTF-8 charset and the initial viewport. Second, find the ideal title and meta description for each page that's shown in the SERPs then. Testing will be necessary, I think, but it's really worth it. And you can use OG meta tags to improve the link previews when you send things via Twitter, Discord, and so on. And here again, the effort really depends on the current state and on the website size. Okay, so let's take a look in here. The first one, the meta tags, Charset and Viewport, the standard meta tags that every application usually has. It can be set in the Nuxt config.js. I think if you create a new project, it will be set automatically. Or you can set it through the Nuxt.js PWA module, because you just have to add the module and it will be there automatically as default. And it also comes with other nice goodies. So we have the standard viewport and charset tags done. Let's get into the title and meta description. First of all, the title. I usually suggest formats like having a primary keyword and a secondary keyword in the title. It shouldn't be like shoes, Nike Air Max dash shoes, pipe, my cool shop. You can have a creative title, just include your keywords there, and include a primary keyword in the front. That's the idea behind that here. So for example, I have just the blog post title, and that's totally fine. Or the article in this case, the article title. And then pipe, and then my brand name is my blog name, because I'm not very creative in terms of naming my blog. Suggestions appreciated. Talking about suggestions, the suggested length is 50 to 60 characters. It's not 50 and it's not 60, it's something in between, because it's measured in pixel and not in characters. And we can use vue-meta's title template function here that I mentioned earlier on to avoid repeating that pipe brand name all the time. So what we're doing, we're jumping our Nuxt config.js, and we have a head property there too, and we can set a title template. So I set it to an arrow function here, and it works the following way. It gets the title chunk, so everything we set in the components as title. Down here, for example, go in Jamstack with Netlify Nuxt, and if there is something set as title, then it will render this string, so this template string, the title, and then pipe, then the brand name. And if there is no title, then the default title will be set, which is quite nice as a fallback. Okay, so then you can define, as I said, the fragments, the title chunks in page components, and you're good to go. And now we talk about the description. The description has, again, a suggested length of 155 to 160 characters, and you can define them in the page components itself. But it's important to note that this is your chance to advertise the content, to really show the desire and give the user the feeling that they should click on the article. Don't be clickbait here or something. Just create interest, create desire. So a good description will yield a high CTR, a high click-through rate, which means the ratio of search engine results shown for that site and people clicking on it. High CTR is a ranking factor, so that's important. And as I've shown here, you can define your the meta description and also other meta tags in the components, in the page components itself. Again, through the head function, besides the title, return the meta down here, and that's it. The HID part is important because it's an ID for the meta tags, so it's easy to override it in child components if you want to. Okay, and these are the basics. I mean, we could have talked about even more, like hreflang for multilingual sites, anchor text, structured data, local SEO, robots, TXT, and so on. But I think it's good. There were lots of info in here. So a few more things before the talk ends. What to do after changing things. So this is very important. You want to monitor, and you want to monitor. Because you want to see if your changes actually changed something. Are the metrics going up? Are they going down? That's important. Also, if after you've changed things, you can resubmit the changed pages or the new pages through the Google Search Console to get quicker reindexation, or so they they're quicker updated in Google's index. And another thing, be patient. SEO takes a bit of time. Worst case, up to half a year to, for example, for site migrations, but for smaller changes, mostly days, but not minutes. So don't expect quick results. If you get quick ones, nice, but don't expect them. So conclusion, SEO is no rocket science. Vue.js and SEO can be a love story. Please always monitor changes to catch mistakes, find chances to improve, and so on. If you see something goes horrible wrong, metrics are going down, change it back. And the only two constants in SEO are, it's not a one-time thing, and as in web dev, things change quickly and often. All right, thanks a lot. You'll find the slides on the URL here, and you can also hit me up on Twitter, obviously in a live Q&A right now. So thanks a lot for your attention, and see you soon.
Oh, wow. Time flies when having fun, right?
True that.
We are really short on time right now. Your talk was amazing, Alex. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I saw that you answered all the questions on the chat. So
I tried to.
maybe, no, you did. I'm sure you did. So maybe we should talk a little bit about your workshop that you all can find into the expo area. It's about Nuxt, the beginner's workshop. So can you give us a little brief about it?
For sure, yeah. So next Monday and Wednesday, so 2 half days basically from 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. There will be a workshop about starting and writing your first Nuxt.js application. We will build a near real-life application with all the cool things in there. You need pretty no Nuxt.js knowledge, only basic Vue.js knowledge and a bit of HTML and JavaScript, and that's all you need. We'll go all through that, and yeah, that will be lots of fun.
Nice. Well, I have worked with Nuxt.js for many years, and I totally recommend using it. So it's a good workshop in case you haven't had the experience yet. Alex, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. I hope to see you
Thanks
soon.
for having me.
Bye-bye.
Same. Bye.